Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Defacto Review. My name is Mogi, and I'm covering for Terrence tonight. Welcome. Good evening, Mr. Jargal.
Good evening, everyone.
Let's see what our topics of conversation are for tonight. Okay, our first topic of conversation tonight is the Vice Speaker of Mongolian Parliament, Mr. Nyemdorj, made a press conference last week stating that concerning Erdenet Mining Corporation. And what he stated was that the sale of the Russia's 49% stake to a Mongolian private company called Mongolian Copper Corporation was not done correctly, and the statements that he did was that even though the government still owns 51% of the Erdenet Mining Corporation, that they have lost effectively management control of this mine. What that means, what he meant was that the company that bought 49% appoints the chairman of the board, the chairman of the nominating committee in a way that the minority owner of Erdenet Mining Corporation has now management control of this mine. So, Mr. Jargal, this statement, we know that the sale of this mining corporation, the 49% that the Russia's owned, was sold to a Mongolian private company on what Mr. Nyemdorj says was on the day before the election, meaning June 28th. And that the Mongolian government has now lost control of the management. Tell me what your thoughts on this, on Mr. Nyemdorj's statement regarding this significant contributor to our Mongolian budget for the past 26 years. And he also claimed that this year, the Erdenet Mining Corporation has only paid, in the first 8 months, only 20 billion tugrik taxes in comparison to last year, where they paid 284 billion tugriks. What are your thoughts?
Well, with Deputy Speaker Nyemdorj statement, I found one thing. Mongolia is not talking about anymore the transfer of 49% of the Russian shares to Mongolian counterpart, or private, say, party. Now they talk about what is happening after. And even what's happening after, according to Nyemdorj, that 49% of all shares owners now deciding everything. Right. They made such amendments into the rule of the joint venture. Now it's already not anymore joint venture between two governments. It's now already Mongolian companies, state government, and the private company, de jure now. And now, what his claim is why all the rules are changing suddenly. Why 51% of the state ownership is not represented at all by any means. Now he's saying that who is now chairman of the board is not clear. Now the auditing committee is now nominated by the 49% owners, not the majority. So he's demanding that it's made clear. But this is my first observation. Second observation is the situation or the silence of the rest of the MP people.
Right.
You remember on the day when Sachen Beleg announced it, former Prime Minister Sachen Beleg announced it a day before election that he had sold 51, he had agreed the Russians sell that 49% of the Mongolian party, a company, he named the company Mongolian Copper. And then after 2 or 3 hours, current MP people came out and made a press conference, press statement, remember? And he said, well, who is this TDB? Who owns TDB? Then they have been mentioning many companies. As a result, they were showing that it is owned by many international companies.
Right.
Then they were saying that it is injustice, everything. But then, as soon as People's Party won the election, they have complete silence. First, they're very striking. Second, new prime minister said they will have a working group to investigate what has happened, and nothing. Like many other similar things in Mongolia, it is now has a silence. Why? I find it's a very deep conflict of interests. So thirdly, let's go into the details of what Mr. Nyamdort said. He was raising an issue of, first time publicly, by the way, on the all broad media, he was raising an issue, who is this man called Erdem Bilek, who is the chairman of the TDB Bank, Trade and Development Bank, who is also 98% shares owner of UB Bank.
Right.
And he said about this ownership, first time, and beyond that, all companies who bought Erdenet is he himself, the chairman of Trade and Development Bank.
Right. Which
now raises a question among public. It's a long time have been raising these questions. Who is this person? Why he owns 98% of Ulaanbaatar Bank, which was founded along with Ulaanbaatar Insurance, Ulaanbaatar, many, remember, financial institutions, Ulaanbaatar Bank, altogether were established when the current Prime Minister Inkpald was the mayor of the Ulaanbaatar city.
The speaker, the current speaker.
The speaker, Mieromp Inkpald.
Right.
And somehow at that time, public were asking, I mean, where is our bank, where is our insurance company? And then it's ended up having this man having 98%. So what is the connection of Mr. Mieromp Inkpald and this person? First question. Second question, why TDB has so much power in this country? Now, TDB only is behind the somehow interesting management privatization, so-called. They have helped to, a private company buys Tarkhang Metallurgy Factory,
right,
which comes with it is right on the iron sources in Seringamak.
One of the biggest iron ore deposits.
Largest iron deposits in the country. Then suddenly these people have it. Now then they have it also, the Tarkhang cement factory.
Yeah, the Khutul
cement factory.
Right.
Now Erdenet. What is this bank which started to own one by one every asset of Mongolia? And plus it has also owned media. Bloomberg, Mongolia.
Right.
So it has kind of independent kingdom inside of the country. That in a way controls all Mongolian politicians. Why? Everybody has silence now, including Mr. President. And now that's why my fourth point is, it's a time to ask Mr. President Ilbegdorj, where are you? What is your stand on this issue of Erdenet? Before and during and after purchase by Mongolian company. So why you have such a silence? Can it be done without the permission of you, State Security Council, and government? No, it's impossible. If you were aware of that, why you have not informed the public, who are the ultimate and legitimate owner of all these assets? So this is the normal questions raising long time in mind of Mongolians. Only now probably you and me are raising and addressing Mr. President to say his stand on these issues. We demand him speaking on these issues. And I'm really surprised how a bank, mostly owned by a person, can control so much our life. Please explain. We are for private companies. We are for privatization.
Right.
But not only to one person or to one company. So that's to one bank. So that's the issue today the local people, Mongolians, are very much concerned about.
The Deputy Speaker also claimed that this sale could not have happened without the permission of the National Security Council, which is comprised of 3 people: the President, the Prime Minister, and the Speaker. And the President is from the Democratic Party, and the sale happened when the Prime Minister was Democratic Party, and the Speaker was from the Democratic Party. But as you said, the new Prime Minister, he said that he created a task force to investigate the nature of the sale of this strategic deposit to a private company, because this could not have happened without the government's permission. And the former Prime Minister claimed that the government did give approval to the Russian side to sell it to a private Mongolian company.
The more this current power, People's Party, in particular its speaker, have a silence on this issue, it more causes discreditability of Mongolians in the current power. Nothing to say about the previous power who had sold it.
Right.
And when they are all both together, have a silence, we are coming to the conclusion that they are kind of doing it together.
The two parties. The two
yes,
major
so
parties.
that means basically all these things, what's happening with Mongolian public property, shows how deep the corruption is in this society. And without combating and stopping these corruptions, how Mongolians would believe in their tomorrow. Whatever you try, you know, the market economy, the principle is the more you try, the more you have benefit, which is not anymore the case. So people are completely kind of not happy with all the situation.
Right. And it's also very strange that one individual can own two banks. You know, Mr. Erdenbilek is the biggest shareholder in Trade and Development Bank. Mr. Nemdorj claimed that he owns more than 40% of Trade and Development Bank. And as you said, the Trade and Development Bank now owns a suite of media companies. They have a television station, they have a newspaper. Now they have a magazine as well, Forest Mongolian magazine.
So the worldwide well-known name can go like this and do whatever the owner wants is kind of surprising, isn't it?
This is something, as you said, that the people, especially the people, needs to keep asking questions from their representatives, from their government. And
this is the situation where, remember the Anderson fairy tale where the king was naked? Everybody said, what a beautiful dress king is on, right? Then the boy says, no, king is naked. So that's
until you're the boy in the story.
Okay.
Okay. Our next story is there's been a debate over the past week or so about allowing a foreign bank to start opening branches here. And there have been several meetings. The Prime Minister, I think 2 weeks ago, met with representatives of the financial sector. And just last week, the banks also had a meeting at the foreign ministry to talk about the influence of the banking sector in attracting foreign investment. So, you know, this has been a very hot topic for the past several years, especially when the first bank mentioned was a Chinese bank, Bank of China, majority Chinese government-owned bank. They've, to my knowledge, sent several requests to the central bank to be given the permit to start opening branches here. And the reason why this topic comes up now and then every time is because of the high interest rates on credit, especially now with the policy rate hike to 15%. That means that commercial banks will have to issue loans at much more higher percent, 20% or so to commercial loans. And in this situation, it's going to be very tough for the business sector to borrow money to continue their business, especially when the economic situation is in a difficult situation. This is a very tough situation now for the business sector. And tell me your thoughts on letting a foreign bank opening a branch and starting competing with the local banks, especially.
That was discussions for last 2 months or so. And last week, the CEO of TDB, Mr. Orhong, said that it's too early for foreign banks to come into the country because we have been working here 20 over years in this banking sector. Now the company will come and take our best customers. This was his statement. to me, as much as I know, our best customers are taken by foreign companies anyway, foreign banks anyway,
right.
which is completely right so. But only the representative offices of, say, Bank of China or ING or Sumitomo Mitsubishi Bank.
Right.
We have 3 or 4 international AAA banks, rep office in Mongolia.
Right.
Though they don't have a branch because some don't apply for that, but in case of Bank of China,
for them,
have
they don't
applied.
need to.
Yeah. Then what happened is, now Bank of China is taking up the best customers anyway because they give information, negotiate here, then they go and take actually money from Beijing. So what our customers are, our Mongolian commercial banks, are the upper SME or medium SME, lower go non-bank financial sector. And they take 18%, 20% interest rate loan, which is very high to pay back if you have a normal business. And why is that so? Because so much higher saving rate. Why saving rate is so high? Because there are 14 commercial banks in the country. 4 large banks have 80% of the all asset. And the remaining 20% is shared by 10 other smaller banks, which are competing with each other higher interest rate of saving. In that way, they are attracting the depositors. And then on the other side, the bigger banks have to raise that commercial interest rate. So I don't know when it will be ended, this competition, unhealthy competition. And it's very hard to prove, but it's customer by customer goes, and they're having a bigger. That's the reason why how small banks are existing. So in this situation, who is the loser? Mongolian businesses, right?
Right.
So that's why it is one of the reasons why we are also in a big crisis. And also our big commercial banks have also on the representative on politicians in Mongolian decision making, straight or not straight way. So this is, in these circumstances, it's very hard to have thriving economy, which is supported, feeded by normal money circulation. So that's why I'm worried very much about having the same high interest rate for businesses. And because we don't need that high interest rates, and companies need lower interest rate, it's the only solution to have foreign banks to come in.
Especially it's difficult to get a 20% loan when inflation is 2-3%, meaning that after a year or so, the price of their products will be virtually the same. Wow, but they're still paying interest, 20% interest.
It reminds me when the commercial banks were saying that, why we have so much high interest rate, because inflation is high.
Yeah.
At that time it was double digits.
Right.
Now when it goes to even deflation in some certain cases,
right.
they should go down.
Right.
But what happened? The policy rate of Mongolian commercial bank, central bank is now 15%.
Right.
I mean, with 15%, then how you need to have, you cannot have a lower loan rate because it's so safe to get 15% per year for last week.
Right.
Central bank sold $200 billion tugriks worth on bonds. Okay. Then government on the other side also sold 420 billion Mongolian tugriks. They sold to commercial banks. So total 620 billion Mongolian tugriks were in the hand of bank and government, where government was paying money for their salary, payroll, and yet the bank had less for 620 billion tugriks, less assets or liquidity, which otherwise should go to businesses.
To the market, yeah.
The reason is the government is borrowing at the level of 16 to 17% a year, the commercial banks.
Right.
So now Mongolian government is competing with Mongolian businesses.
Yeah.
So that's the, I think, last tolerable situation of a country which is so heavily in debt in national owned currency and a foreign currency.
Yeah, when the government is selling their bonds at 17%, I saw their Friday auction, it was 17%, the 1-year government treasuries. When the government is selling at 17%,
when inflation is almost 3% now.
How can the normal businesses can borrow at low rates? It just can't. It's not possible. Banks will have to. It's businesses will have to accept 20, maybe even more than 20% interest rates just to get a loan to continue their businesses. This is not a very healthy situation.
Not at all. So that's the major concern now. I think this is we should talk about the third part of our discussions today. The government trying to find out the exit from the current situation.
And the finance minister, Cho Jin-seung, he made a statement that that the government will move forward major projects, including Tawon-Tolgoi. And he also, in the 2017 budget, the budget draft that the government is going to submit to the parliament, it includes a number of the major projects that the government has promised to move forward, including Tawon-Tolgoi. And what are your thoughts on government's action so far and trying to recover the economy? What do you think the budget for next year should be?
Well, every minister, prime minister and minister of finance was always saying that they will go ahead with the mega projects, in particular Tawon-Tolgoi and Oyu-Tolgoi. Oyu-Tolgoi goes now, finally, thanks God, it goes on way. But Tawon-Tolgoi doesn't go. If it goes in such an interesting way that Mongolians want to understand more. Why Tawon-Tolgoi, the best coking coal deposit in the Northeast Asia now, is being sold at $27 per ton. At the same time, a coal, less quality, being sold, coking coal on the east coast of China at $200 per ton. Is it the way you go with the mega project? Looks like yes. Why? Because it's too much government inside. Whenever the government started this Tawon-Tolgoi company, Irtnes Tawon-Tolgoi company, since that this poor company is always in debt. In such a debt that they have been paying, 5-6 years. And I remember the two previous CEOs we cannot find with the help of Interpol even today. So this means how, in general, government is bad manager, in particular Mongolian government, where you have a lot of corruption. So how you can go ahead when you have such situation?
Right.
So that's a very worrying. And plus, even it goes, say something happened, magic thing happens. But then first of all, we need these railways, right? And now never-ending
saga.
Railways. And they say we lost $200 million. Then they say, oh no, half of them already made the paid part of it. Different opinions, no independent opinions on that.
Several people are being investigated.
Yeah,
and actually
several $1 million are missing on that anyway. And if finally we borrow more money, put the railways finally, then start to sell Tawon-Tolgoi coal. If China say one day, no, we will not buy any more, then who will pay for that investment? Before investing money into the railway, you should ask this question. What happens? What is your risk?
Who's going to buy?
Yes. What is your risk management on that? Which is not the case. So unfortunately,
every mine, every big mine, before they start even production, even they start digging the first ton, they should have offtake agreements ready for the next several years. And in this case, you're suggesting that Tawon-Tolgoi should do the same thing as well.
All private companies do that because they know that it's their own money and they are to pay back anyway, the same individual, same personality. In case of the government, they don't think that way. If sometimes they think in that way, they know one thing. By the time the mine will pay back, he will not be there. He doesn't care. As soon as if it is elected, okay. If not elected, he's disappeared. Like many previous decision makers, ministers, prime ministers, where are they? We are staying with this debt. Every child, every poor man, rich man in this country paying from the piece of bread through taxes, through irresponsibility.
They're all complicit in creating this economic situation.
That's the situation, because this corruption that our leaders talk too much and that don't complete anything, we start to pay all this with our own labor, with our own perspiration, you see.
We always overpromise and underdeliver.
And the question is how long it will go. When this finally Mongolians will demand these politicians to tell the truth, to be responsible for their actions. Mm-hmm. So that's that loop we cannot get together up to now. That's why we have the situation we have today.
Interesting. Okay, I'd like to add another topic to our conversation. This is a very recent news. On Friday, there was an article on Bloomberg. Michael Khan, a resident Bloomberg reporter, wrote an article saying that the Mongolian government has officially requested financial assistance from the International Monetary Fund. And in the article, the IMF spokesperson confirmed it. And in the article, it said that the finance minister and the governor of Bank of Mongolia will go to Washington, D.C. next week to attend the board of directors meetings of IMF and World Bank to supposedly officially send in that request. Right. And IMF also confirmed that an IMF team will come to UB in late October to assess the situation and figure out how the IMF can help Mongolia. To me, this is probably the best news international investors have been waiting for. They've been expecting it, but they were not sure. So this confirms that Mongolia will once again enter into an IMF standby agreement. It could be a standby agreement or it could be something else, depending on what the situation is. And do you agree this is a good news for Mongolian economy, Mongolian investment environment, right?
That's long-awaited good news. It reminds me 2008, when that time government had to go through the same procedure, I remember exactly the same. Mm-hmm. It took the same time, all these talks, then officially requested they come back, and finally they got $280 million US. But
2009,
2009, and hopefully now maybe the level of Mongolian economy or size of the economy can borrow a little bit more, maybe about 70% or maybe up to $400 million, maybe. But however, the situation 2008 was different. Yeah. Today we are completely in a full mud of debt.
It's our own fault.
No back, no forward. We stay there. And we're not sure all this debt money went to the economy and are ready or are getting paid back the debt. I'm not sure. It is, at least there is no independent report. It looks like very little. Because it was mismanaged. There's a lot of conflict of interests. And already they have been arresting one deputy minister for embezzling about $1 million US from the bond, and many other informations are coming. But unfortunately, this sort of corruption scandals coming and disappearing shortly in Mongolia. So this is the way how we are going probably have a problem with payment of all debt. So suppose we have $400 million from IMF. But remember, we have today, as we speak of, 2.5 billion tugriks or 1.2 million tugriks of budget deficit. Right. Which is 3 times probably more than IMF handed over probably money. So it is not that easy. Plus, it's under IMF conditions, we have to cut a lot expenses.
Cut budget, cut back government expenditure, but there's so many things that the IMF also demands that I think...
which is natural, because IMF is borrowing money from other taxpayers' money. Right. So they, as a banker, is to be responsible for that. And we don't spend we just pay with this money our debt payment. So that's very tricky situation where you require strong leadership, tough fight with corruption, which I doubt that this current power can do it. So not easy situation, but it's better because at least we will have some kind of iron shirt, supposedly, to limit the movement.
On a final note, it sounds interesting timing. You know, the IMF team will arrive late October, meaning that the local elections will be over. So it'll be interesting what the politicians will be promising leading up to the local elections, knowing the fact that they might not be able to fulfill it. Same thing as the parliamentary elections. They promised a lot, but then they knew the situation. Everybody knew the situation. MPP knew the situation, but they still made us a lot of promises. They knew that they won't be able to fulfill.
That's our problem. All our life depends on any elections happens there or there or next year for president. And because we're dependent so much on elections, Mongolians are almost cheated by many promises. So I think it is kind of one of the attempts to end this sort of wrong practice.
The Mongolian people never learn.
Trying.
Okay, this is the end of our de facto review. So thank you, Mr. Jargal, for always being such a good host.
Thank you for coming today. And
it's an interesting for me to be sitting on this side of the table. I usually covered for you a couple of times on the other side of the table. So
you know, also we have tried to make a Facebook live streaming of this program, which we will do in the future. And please watch that on the V Television Facebook. And also, you can rewatch it, and also from tomorrow you can watch the program on jargaldefacto.com. And please also send your requests, comments, which will tremendously help us to be, on track. And we try to be that independent thoughts of and voices of Mongolians. Thank you very much.
With that, thank you everyone, and good night.